Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. It's time for the Bronx Buzz. This is when we talk to reporters and all different people who are putting stuff out in the Bronx. And in our second segment, you're going to love it. We have a Bronx author who changed children's lives, and you're going to see why and how in just a few moments. But we're going to start out with one of our favorite segments from the past few months. A reporter from the Mott Haven Herald, excellent, smart woman named Cherry Salazar. She was on the show October 18th and talked about the local business improvement district in the Bronx wanting more cameras in the hub to curb illegal dumping. And we got to meet somebody who's a really special Bronx person. Take a look. You have a particular piece about the South Bronx that I thought was fascinating. And but before we do that, let's meet you. So let's see. You were at the Craig Newmark School, which is where all the reporters for the Mott Haven Herald and Hunts Point Express come from. Tell me a little bit about your background. Where you from? You from somewhere? From New
Yeah,
York?
I am actually. So I only recently moved to New York. This is my second month in New York. I moved
Wow!
here specifically
Welcome
for
aboard.
graduate education. Before that, thank you. Before that, I was an investigative and data reporter in the Philippines. So I have like over a decade of experience from back home. And then it's my first
Wow!
time in New York, which is nice.
So you came here from the. I wasn't aware of that. You came here from the Philippines.
Yes.
And your English is perfect, is pitch
Thank
perfect.
you.
Um, and you came 2 months ago, so you could start, I presume, starting the semester at Craig Newmark.
Yep.
The first thing was what news did you do over there? This is a fascinating story in and of itself. And so what was it like covering news across the world?
Right. So in the Philippines, I did usually long form pieces. So I was a documentary producer and I produced multiple documentaries that run about an hour. And
Wow.
I've also done investigative multimedia reporting. So that will have like maybe 3,000 words and it will run for multiple like reports in a series. That's basically what I do. And what's different about reporting for Mott Haven Herald for me is that it's hyper local. I've always done national issues, and so that's quite interesting for me. And I'm new to New York. I'm new to South Bronx in Bronx. So like it's a very new experience.
Well, one thing I will tell you, so people don't say, "Oh, she's from somewhere else." You should always call it the Bronx.
The
It's not
Bronx.
in Bronx. I mean, this is another whole show, but it was named after the Bronx River, so it's always been called the Bronx. It's
Mhm.
very very unusual. What motivated you? You wanted to come to New York, get the opportunity to study abroad. Do you plan to stay here, or do you think you're going to go back to the Philippines, or who knows?
I actually haven't thought that far yet. I know that most of my classmates have already decided that they want to stay in New York. I'm not really sure because
Okay.
I'm at a point in my career where I feel like I have some more room for improvement, and where I was at could not give me that. And I thought that hey, I could maybe try overseas.
Well, and
That's
certainly it would literally and figuratively broaden your horizon
Mhm.
and see another way of doing things. Well, I appreciate the fact that you're open minded about it, and you should leave all the options open because the world is at your feet. And so, my last question before we get into the subject matter: what turns you on about doing news? What turns you on about doing the documentaries you did? And even about covering in the Bronx, or those kinds of things. What's the guts, the motivation here?
Okay, this might be a bit idealistic, I
Oh, we
think.
love that. Hey, wouldn't it be nice to have ideas? We like ideals and ideas. That's great. Go ahead.
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I was around 8 years old. So this is a bit personal for me. I was about 8 years old, and we had the second bloodless revolution in the country that forced a former president to resign from his post, and it was triggered by a series of investigative reports. So then I thought, oh, journalism can change things, and that's how I decided I wanted
Wow.
to be one.
What a
So in a
great,
way,
that is a
that's what I
great
wanted to
story.
do. Yeah. So I was thinking of what are the social issues and what how is it intersecting with political accountability, stuff like that.
Well, I must tell you, if you want social issues and political accountability, you've come to the right place because, I've been covering the Bronx for decades and that's what we got. I spent a lot of time doing that. All right. Well, this is this story that the bid over there in Southern Boulevard wants more cameras in the hub to curb illegal dumping. So what you have discovered is this horrible situation down there in what a lot of people call the downtown Bronx. And in some ways, it's the center of life in the borough at 100. And I used to have an office down there, so I know exactly what goes on in that neighborhood. And that picture that you showed is only the tip of the iceberg, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about what you found and what the story is.
So basically, as I said earlier, everything is new to me, right? But what struck me about the Third Avenue is that it's a very busy intersection. People go there for transit, they go there for work, or they go there just because they wanted to shop or dine in new restaurants. I knew I was kind of like that. But the thing
Especially coming here from somewhere else. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, go ahead.
And the thing is, the sanitation concern actually sets that potential back. So I was walking one day, one afternoon, and I was just like talking to residents, to workers and pedestrians, and I was asking them, what do you think about sanitation in this area? And they said a bunch of things. They're very opinionated. They said that we needed more sanitation workers. We needed more trash collection times. There is an issue with the pickup. Sometimes they said the Department of Sanitation aren't picking up the trash. They said that we have illegal dumpers. They said that some businesses don't have their own bins. So there's a plethora of like different reasons why there is such a problem. And that's what got me into maybe try to look into this.
And I have to say, like any good journalist, that's how you started. You started just kind of moving around and asking questions. So the last 2 years, this is what you reported, roughly 300 cameras have been positioned in known hotspots around the city. That's interesting. My question after reading your piece, what about enforcement? I mean, is it a matter of the city enforcing itself? Because you talked about sanitation pickups. Maybe they're not regular. Maybe not the first time we've had it. They disregard the South Bronx. They disregard certain neighborhoods. We know that goes on in the Bronx. Or is it something else that one thing breeds the other? Because the sanitation department doesn't do their job, people think, people who are somewhat irresponsible think it's okay. I got to get rid of this garbage. I'll just throw it out,
Right. It's definitely not black and white. So I've had some people telling me that they feel that resources are centralized in Manhattan, and it sometimes certainly looks that way. But it's also an issue of whether the people themselves, those in the neighborhood, are disposing their garbage properly. So that's another thing. I've also heard of some things that apparently some of the garbage bins had been stolen. And we are trying to look into that for another report. So I don't want to say much about that. But so it's a mix of both, actually. It's a matter of enforcement. It's also a matter of discipline to residents. And so it's not that black and white.
Some people say, all right, well, there's garbage. I mean, nobody likes it. But of course, it attracts vermin. That's obviously. And number two, if people want to have pride in their neighborhood, if people want to, feel good about themselves, have pride in their own lives, pride in their city, I just think it's part of the whole picture that you don't say to yourself, well, we got to get rid of this garbage. Just put it here, right in the center of where, it's the busiest thoroughfare in New York City. I think there's 250,000 people that go through 149th and 3rd Avenue every day. Now, let's see, you said there were more than 200 illegal dumping summonses issued so far this year. On one hand, that sounds like a lot, but considering the pictures that we just saw, boy, they probably could do a heck of a lot more. And so we don't really know, just back to my original question, we don't really know what kind of enforcement or if the cameras themselves have really turned out, had effect, I guess.
Yeah. And we also have to point out that those numbers that you mentioned earlier, those are from the Department of Sanitation, and those are citywide numbers. So
Oh, thank you for pointing that out.
talking about just Third Avenue. So,
Wow.
so we don't know how much is actually like the summons says in the Bronx, um, how much maybe illegal dumpers they've caught doing that because of the cameras. We do know that in 2022 there have been 15 security cameras that were installed. So that's what the issue is about. The Third Avenue bid is hopeful that if there are more cameras, then there are more chances to maybe catch them and like identify these illegal dumpers.
You know, one of the other things in that particular neighborhood, which I know you know, and you mentioned it in your piece, is the whole notion of discarded syringes.
Mhm.
Now, that is aside from the garbage it is, and the unit, which is, you know, is going to last, probably be at the bottom of our oceans for, you know, generations to come. But that's very dangerous. I mean, you could have somebody pick it up or somebody trip over it, and you know, and because there's chemicals on it, that's bad. That's really bad garbage. Is there any particular effort in that regard, or is that just piled up with all the other garbage?
So in St. Mary's Park, I know that there were
Yes.
some boxes that had been installed specifically for this kind of trash, but we are not sure right now if that is included in the efforts of the Department of Sanitation when it comes to making probably a better improved enforcement in terms of the problem in the area. The thing is, Department of Sanitation apparently, and this is only something that I learned while I was doing the story, apparently cannot collect the garbage if there are these hazardous
If there are what?
items. So we're talking about
Oh,
used syringes and needles. That's an entirely different agency
wow.
that is in charge of that. So what happens now is they have
That's
to have
fascinating.
this other agency to come and pick up and maybe isolate this hazardous trash. And then the sanitation department comes again
Right,
and
and
pick up
going,
the down trash. Yeah.
wow. Yeah, and you know, I hate to bring this up because it almost puts a finite period at the end of the sentence, and that is given the state of the mayor's mayoralty right now and all the people who have left. I think I read a story about you know, there are a number of agencies that are quite understaffed and underfunded because of this whole mess. So who knows? Anyway, we got about 30 seconds left. So
Mhm.
your next task is going to expand on this concept of sanitation and pickups and dumping in the Bronx. That's what you're working on?
Not really.
Oh,
I
okay.
am working on quite a lot of things. I mean,
All
it's
right, that's fair.
I am looking right now into possibly working on a story about luxury apartments in Mount Haven Herald. And give
Oh,
so much details yet.
you listen, we got to run, but you have stepped right in the center of it. And we're going to look for everything that you write, and you put some stuff out. We'll have you back, and we'll analyze it the next time as well. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cherry Salazar, she clearly not only has a past, but a future in journalism. And if we're lucky, she will stick around in the Bronx and work with us. Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. I am thrilled with this guest and this segment because it harkens back in part into my own past as a reporter for BronxNet many years ago. But let me bring on a chess instructor, chess master, chess genius, chess teacher, author of this book, Sunrise in the Bronx, Chess and Life Lessons from the South Bronx to the White House. David MacEnulty, nice to see you again.
Very nice to see you too. Thank you for having me here.
I'll just let people know that way back when in the 90s, I was doing a couple of news stories, and I walked into CES 70 because I had heard they had an amazing chess program, and David MacEnulty was there. David, let's just go rewind a little bit. You were not a chess guy. You had done all kinds of stuff, and my sense from reading the book was that you were kind of finding yourself, right? You were like, you did this. You're a musician, right? So very briefly, where were you at when you entered CES 70 for the first time?
Wow. Okay. I'll try to be really brief on this.
Yes.
But I've always sort of known who I was. I've always just enjoyed whatever it was that I was doing, whether it was music or writing or construction. It really doesn't matter what I do. I'm always trying to enjoy whatever it is. I was at the time working in real estate as a building manager, and I wasn't really enjoying that very much. And then a friend of mine, Bruce Pandolfini, one of the great chess authors and teachers, asked me to teach a class for him. And I thought he was out of his mind because I was just somebody who loved to play chess. I've been playing since I was about 5, but I never really studied it the way the masters did. I was just, somebody who loved to play the game. And he convinced me to go in and teach for him, and I did, and I loved it. He asked me to do it again, and I loved it even more.
And then one thing, I want to move forward. One thing led to another, and the next thing you know, you were in front of students. One of the iconic things that I remember is you were talking to the kids, and the discovery about, because of the difficult lives many of them led, they didn't know a lot of things. And you said, what is like a straight line? And if you're teaching chess, and the kids were like, it took a while to even describe that.
Yes. I had a terrible time in the beginning because I was operating under the illusion that I should simply tell them what they needed to know. And that's not quite the way it works. You have to start with where they are. And if these children don't understand the use of the word corner, for example, you've got to teach what a corner is. And so I really reevaluated how to teach chess, starting with the basic simple line, straight line. What is a straight line? What happens when you join 2 straight lines together, a perpendicular and a horizontal? You get a right angle. You get 4 of those together with equal sides, and you have a square. You get 8 squares in a row, and you have a rank. Put 8 on top of each other, and you have a chessboard with ranks, and diagonals.
So what my sense was that in some ways, now we're going to talk about how not only did you teach that, but you got the education about who these children are, where they come from, and as much of an education as they did, who eventually became chess champions. We know that. So for you, that must have been quite an education. I mean, the teacher got as big an education as anybody.
And a big learning curve for me as well. One of the things that astonished me was, I grew up in a nice middle class background with 2 college educated parents, and they read to me all the time. And, we just grew up using words all the time. And what I discovered was there was a study done many years ago about how often children are read to and spoken to.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that if you have you can divide the population into 2 groups, which is not usually a good thing to do. But in this case, you have those in poverty and those not in poverty. Generally speaking, according to these studies, the people in poverty are read to far less than people in the middle class and above. So the children that I was working with didn't have a lot of work with language. They hadn't been read to as often as my children were and as I was.
Or as you assumed they had been.
Right. And so when I discovered that they didn't have all that experience, to put it basically, with the neurological processing of language, that what I had to do was make up for that deficit by being really super clear and using words that we could now have a shared terminology. And that only that way can we really understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about something completely alien to them, which was chess.
Was the movements on a chessboard. So now here's the hardest question I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
So going from that place where they didn't even know the straight or what a corner was, how did you get them to a point where they were not only competitive but became champion, nationally recognized chess players? I mean,
Okay.
In 10
That,
words. Oh,
well, see, the great thing is that all of these kids they weren't read to, as I was talking about. They are very smart.
no doubt, man. You're
There was
talking to a
no
Bronx
question
boy
about their
here.
abilities. It was a question of how prepared were they to begin taking classes. So my job was really preparation. And once I got them to realize just how smart they were, because, as I like to say, if you beat somebody in a game of chess, they're not going to call you stupid. And
Although
so,
one of the things, oh, go ahead. I'm going
well,
to do an
so when they
although after
started
you finish.
really learning the scientific ideas behind how you make a decision in chess, and then the emotional things that go along with that, they began to feel really empowered, which is what they should have been feeling because they were very smart kids. And once they start really believing in themselves, the sky's the limit. They can do anything, and in fact,
The
they have gone on to do just about anything
tremendous
you
things.
can imagine.
The although that I was going to mention is, I was shocked at the section on cheating.
Yes,
And by the way, again, the book, you should check it out. It's all about our kids. And there it is, Sunrise in the Bronx, Chess and Life Lessons from the South Bronx to the White House. Um, but and then the kids, you had to teach them the other part of it, to control their emotions. Imagine a child being
yeah,
cheated on and not having, especially a kid from the Bronx who knows the one thing they know is what's fair and not fair.
right,
And you
absolutely,
had to get them to, to deal with that. There's a quote that I pulled out of the book that says, chess is a touchstone of human behavior and emotional development. So it's not only the movement on the board you were dealing with, you
right.
were dealing with really developing people, getting them to be academically smart and all those kinds of
Well, chess is actually a very stressful activity in a way because
things.
it's a contest between your brain and somebody else's brain. And if you lose, you've got to admit that they knew something you didn't know. And that's really crucial for being a good human being.
Good human being, and learning how to be a human being
Yeah.
for
And
8, 9, 10, and 11-year-olds.
yeah, so one of my big messages was losing a chess game or making a mistake doesn't define you. It shows you what you need to work on. And I'm here to help you work on it. And once they got that idea, once they knew that we were going to really help them, they began to look on mistakes as an opportunity to grow. And once people have that mindset, they don't get mad at themselves for making a mistake. They don't call themselves foolish or berate themselves. They think, okay, what did I not know that I now need to learn?
I want to just get to some of the mechanics of the
Yes.
program that you put together. You
Mhm.
traveled literally all over the country.
Yes.
You got them in early in the morning before class to get
Right.
their mindset. And imagine, I'm just talking to my friends and neighbors in the Bronx. Imagine doing that and then sending a child from a chess discussion into math class. Then the child's mind is thinking analytically and by numbers and counting and all that. And
Absolutely.
you also ran a summer program. So we talk about what are kids going to do productively in the summer when there's no school, and you had them in playing chess.
Well,
I can't. I would stand and applaud.
yeah. Thank you. One of the great things about chess is that it has spin-offs into virtually every other subject. Once, regardless of what you're doing, you have to learn how to put things in the proper sequence. You have to understand the patterns of whatever field you're in. And once you understand those things and how to manipulate them and how to work with other people to make everybody really understand what you're dealing with, regardless of the subject. Once you get these kids with that idea, there's just no stopping them. And the proof is the other night I had a party where I invited a bunch of the kids from the team.
Really,
Uh,
from
and
and
they're
and
all
they're adults now.
they're in their 30s and early 40s.
Wow. And
And
and are they, I mean, I know you counted one of the children who had some issues, and you said now he's a successful financial planner.
one of them is a senior vice president at a big financial institution.
Wow.
Another one is up for a job at the Federal Reserve. Another one is a project manager at a large engineering firm in Texas. Another one is doing artificial intelligence research. I mean,
Wow.
these kids
It
have
goes on and on. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, years ago, actually about the same time that I did those news stories, I produced a video about tennis and why tennis was important for children.
Mhm.
And one of the things they said were the same things I read in your book about being alone, having to, dissect what was going on, and
Mhm.
then strategize and plan. Do you hit the ball this way? Do you hit the
Yes.
ball that way? And they talked about the very same things you're talking about. Is the fact that if they do those things, they will be successful in life, not necessarily as tennis players, but
Right.
as human beings. The last thing I want to ask you about, what you were telling me about beforehand, ultimately you won championships, national championships, and you got invited to the White House.
Yes.
Do
Um,
tell.
well, we went to the national tournament in Dallas, Texas. And at that point, I had 4 really super strong players. And I thought they had a chance to finally really win it. And then the kids underneath them were also very, very strong. And it turned out to be just amazingly successful. We won 2 sections at the national tournament, thereby making our school from the South Bronx the #1 chess school in the entire United States for
Well,
elementary.
that, by the way, the school is CES 70.
CES 70, yes. And we
And
had
I
a brilliant.
remember the principal. I remember Mark Singer.
Oh,
I
yes.
mean, these are all people that I had interviewed many,
Right.
many years ago.
Yeah. Well, our principal, Sylvia Simon, was the one
So
who hired me to be a teacher. She was brilliant, God's gift to education. But as a result of winning that tournament, we got invited to the White House for a special science event where Neil deGrasse Tyson and Marcia
another
McLuhan,
Bronxite, by the way. But
yes, went to Bronx Science.
he certainly did.
So that was an amazing event, to have.
And the kids got it. How many kids went?
I only took the top 4.
You took the top 4. That makes sense. But
Right.
what a tremendous thing. Now, by the way, again, the book is there. It is, Sunrise in the Bronx, and please check it out if you want to read about what it takes to make successful children in the Bronx. This is one way to do it. Where are you at now? Did you retire? Are you still teaching chess? You
I
still
have
playing?
retired,
Okay.
and I'm very happy.
Very happy that you're retired. Are you
Yeah.
still playing chess?
I still play from time to time,
Do you-
and I still study it. It's a lifelong effort.
If a child came by and said, "Could you help me figure it out?" You could probably give him some pointers, him or her, some
I could do
pointers.
that once or twice.
Listen, David MacEnulty, thank you for taking care of our Bronx kids,
Oh, Gary,
and
thank you so
we
much.
really, really appreciate you and everything you did and everything you do for us in the Bronx. I want to remind people, Sunrise in the Bronx, check it out. It will inspire you. You'll learn about what it takes to educate our kids, and not only educate them, but to develop them as people. Thank you so much for that and for joining us on the Bronx Buzz.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you.
We'll stay in touch. Okay, that will do it for the Bronx Buzz for this evening, and we'll say happy holidays to everybody. And you know what we always say, if the curtain don't fall and the creek don't rise, yeah, I'll be back next week.